Welcome to Raising the Bar, the podcast that pulls back the curtain on the country's most successful leaders and how they elevate their business and their teams. Please welcome our host, Alison.
Welcome everybody to the latest episode of Raising the Bar, where we talk with CEOs who are making a difference, raising the bar in their professional lives. And it is my pleasure to have an old friend of mine, Francesca Rattray, who is now the CEO of the YWCA in San Antonio, which is quite a dynamic and unheard of organization, or their mission is a little not as known as perhaps it should be. So we're going to change that today. So thank you for joining me today.
It is an honor and a pleasure. You know, Alison, you were the first influential business owner that I met when I moved to San Antonio. I think it was back in 2005, not long after 2005. Yep. So it is a pleasure.
Well, thank you for that. And that was when we were both involved in Impact San Antonio, also another worthy organization. So you've been in the nonprofit world your entire professional life, and now you're at the YWCA, and you have very big plans for the YWCA. Would you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So this is my first CEO position.
Yep. Congratulations.
And it has been a personal and a professional journey intertwined. But let me start by saying that the mission of YWCA is to eliminate racism and empower women, which we achieve by removing barriers for women to become self-sufficient and break the cycle of poverty. And we see these barriers as childcare. We provide high quality, Texas Rising Star accredited early childhood education and development for children ages 0 to 5 so their parents can work. We provide youth services that create a pipeline for youth to be successful in college and careers that incorporate our mission and self-esteem building, workforce development, and service learning programs. We also have an economic empowerment and workforce development program. We're partners with the city's Ready to Work program, which navigates individuals to high-paying jobs. And our last program area is health equity, which creates access to those without insurance or who can't afford the copays to gain access to high-quality health services. We also train community health workers that help to take information and services to the community. What makes us unique as a nonprofit is that we have a mandate for advocacy and education about the systemic issues and challenges that women, and especially women of color, face. So we have a racial justice and gender equity advocacy program, an initiative that includes advocating for wage equity for women, and especially women of color, creating racially just and equitable workplaces, and programs in the community. So that's a quick overview of our mission and our programs and how we achieve our mission.
How did you come to this role?
Well, as you said, I have been in the nonprofit world my whole life. And if I look back over, what connects the dots between what I'm doing now and how I started out, it's really always been two themes, poverty alleviation and women, and the role that women can play in alleviating poverty. One of my first and most formative careers or positions after, so I received my MBA with a focus on nonprofit management. So I've been able to see the for-profit side and the nonprofit side. But my first real position in the nonprofit world was to raise funds for an organization focusing on microfinance, which are small loans to women in developing countries. And we saw then that when you give the tools for economic development to a woman, she invests in her family first of all. Yep. And that creates a ripple effect that invests in the community and the entire city. So I was so inspired by that work that it was hard to get away from work that empowered women.
Mhm.
Whether I moved into the arts, and I did raise funds for an arts organization that
Yep.
was started by an amazing woman, to this position, which is completely focused on empowering women. I really feel that I found my home here.
So I spend a lot of time in the health insurance world, and there are some good studies that indicate that for every dollar spent on medical care, 10 cents is a medical need and 90 cents is a social determinant of health issue that may lead to a medical need, but it starts as a social determinant of health issue. And what I hear you talking about is access to health, access to childcare, access to education so that I can get a job and I can support my family.
Absolutely. And I would add that I didn't mention earlier housing.
Yep.
Housing is such a driver of health, and it's also another area that YWCA is getting into.
Will you talk a little bit about your housing project? Because I think it is just remarkable, and what is happening at your new facility is can change the lives of not only women, but of small children as well. And I think we don't talk enough about how a self-sufficient mother will can help support her children and propel her children a little further and help alleviate the struggles that she had.
Well, I agree completely, and you just look around this community and you just even think back to, when we were younger and graduating from college, the lack of affordable housing for
Mhm.
working people, let alone those without college degrees, is
Yep.
staggering in this country. And in San Antonio, it is especially acute. We knew we wanted to get into housing for years. There are 200 YWCAs in the country, and more than half are in some sort of housing for women, especially. And when I heard that, I made it a point of engaging the board around the conversation, and so we began looking around, and I guess word got out that we were looking around. And in 2021, a local order of the Sisters of Divine Providence reached out and said,
Mhm.
"Hey, we're moving out of our building. We have a convent. Would you like to come take a look at it?" And we looked at it, and it was perfect. It's a 9-acre former convent with an existing residential structure on it and room to grow. And so, long story short, we were able to put together the funding to finance and use some of our equity to purchase it, and we bought it and moved in early 2022. And we're in the process of raising what we're estimating as $10 million
Mhm.
to renovate the residential building and also build from the ground up an on-site childcare center. So the goal is to serve single women only,
Mhm.
some with children or without children, and allow them to live on campus for up to 4 years. So that's a unique model.
Yes.
Most housing, affordable housing or supportive housing programs are just 18 months or 2 years.
Mhm.
And ours will allow a woman to potentially finish a bachelor's degree while having basic needs met and their children cared for.
Yep.
So, we're really excited about that. It'll serve women ages 18 to 25 and potentially a little older. We're not gonna have a hard cutoff, but that is, we will ultimately serve 30 women over 4 years and sometimes rotate them out earlier if they get a job that allows them to live self-sufficient
You have
sufficient.
some remarkable success stories. I've met them of remarkable young women, really smart, driven, ambitious women who just needed a little bit of help. How satisfying is that? I know that's a completely ridiculous question, but how satisfying is that?
I get chills when when I hear the stories, when, we as I mentioned, our workforce training program,
Mhm.
um, provides stipends to allow women to get trained for in-demand jobs. And we have been focusing a lot on the allied health field, and you
Mhm.
know what a need it is there.
It is
Um,
huge.
so we're training women, and primarily women. There are a couple of men who've gone through the program to become community health workers. And in partnership with Workforce Solutions Alamo and the city's Ready to Work program, our case managers have gotten individuals to go through the training program. And we've heard stories of young women who are 21 years old, who never even imagined in their lives that they would be able to live independently. And when you
Yep.
hear them, you hear the pride in their voice that they're not living at their parents' house, or they're not couch surfing, and they're able to afford rent and put their child in childcare. It's truly inspirational.
I think, for many of us, we're very fortunate. I know certainly I was, and it was expected that I would go to college. And I often tell the story, I think much to my mother's chagrin and amusement, that when I was 5, I told her that I wanted to be a nurse. And she grabbed me by the arm and shook both my shoulders, as mothers do, and said, "Absolutely not. You will be a doctor." And then I went through a phase that I didn't want to go to college. And she looked at me and she said, "I don't care if you're a hooker when you grow up. You're going to be a well educated hooker." I'm pretty sure she didn't mean that, but clearly that stuck with me. And that was expected of us, right? But for so many women, that expectation is not there. And to see that accomplishment has to be just the best feeling.
It is, and you touch on something that I think is lacking, especially for potential first generation college goers, which is a culture of, well, what
Education.
do you do once you finish high school? If
Hmm.
you don't have those voices just saying, you need a career
Yep.
to support yourself, first of all. And, it doesn't necessarily have to be college, but, banking on the idea that you're going to be married and someone's going to take care of you is not an investment strategy, as we know
Correct.
all the time.
Yes,
But
we do.
having those voices and the safety net of people around you saying, well, why don't you try this? Or have you explored, what your life is going to look like in 5 years? And I think that's what YWCA provides through our case managers.
Yes.
We work with the women going through the program, and create individual career plans. And that includes everything from, well, what are you going to do for your certification? What are you going to do for college? And then how are you going to get that entry level job? To do you need housing support? Do you need childcare support? So it really is full wraparound services for someone going through that program, which for a lot of people from our generation, or our other communities, they have that support
Yep.
system built in from parents and even peers.
Hmm.
So we provide that for the individuals going through our programs.
How different is being the executive leader of a nonprofit from being the executive leader of a for profit? I imagine there are some similarities and there are some pretty stark differences.
Well, I guess by way of answering that question, I think about common myths that you often hear from people who maybe want a second career in the nonprofit world after leading a bank, or leading a for-profit entity. They're like,
Yep.
oh, I'll retire and manage a nonprofit. Well, it's often a lot harder than managing a for-profit. So the first myth is budget. You might think that nonprofits, run at a low budget. And nonprofit means no profit, and you're in constant state of deficit. Well, I have never been more motivated to make money and make sure that our bottom line doesn't have a deficit, as I have in the last 5 years that I've been here, and a lot of nonprofits are in the $20 million a year budget range. YWCA has grown in the past 5 years from on average $1.8-2 million budget to now $6.5 million. And that is like running a small business.
That's a lot of growth in a small business.
A lot of growth. And with that growth comes the second myth that I would like to talk about, which is managing people. When you grow at that level, your HR challenges are probably the same as in a for-profit. People run businesses. People, even in a purely technology a pure technology company, it's the people you need to manage. And I don't care who you talk to as a CEO or as the director of their organization, managing people is the number one challenge. And during COVID, it was harder than ever, managing remotely and hybrid, and also managing all of the trauma that people were experiencing during COVID and the uncertainty that people experience. So I would say that managing people is both a similarity. One key difference is the nonprofit world draws some rebels and activists, and which is a great thing. But it also means team building in a nonprofit with individuals who are very, rebellious and suspicious of upper management. It's a greater challenge, but there are opportunities there. And then I would say probably the third major difference is, we're providing a public good often that, used to be provided by the government, that the question of who pays for it is there. Like, for example, childcare. Should childcare be a public good so that businesses can thrive? We provide childcare. What's the appropriate cost level for it? Most of our childcare families are subsidized. Probably all but 3 families are covered by some sort of subsidy. In the for-profit world, there's a market, like a supply and demand, that drives the cost, and people will pay for it. And so with nonprofits, we need to figure out who's going to cover the gap. And usually it's a funder. It's sometimes the government, but we try not to pass that cost onto our customers. So.
Sure. And you start from zero most years, correct? So you are just like any other business starting from zero.
And that is something that a lot of nonprofits try to build a buffer into by looking for multi-year funds and different contracts, and cultivating those relationships with donors, which is endless, in order to ensure that you have that cushion of funds every year. So that is the same for us.
Your housing project is going to take a little bit to I know you've made a good start, and the building lends itself to what you're trying to do. I want to circle back and talk about the communal kitchen. I thought that was such an interesting, you'll have full suites for families where they have their own bedrooms, bathrooms, kind of maybe a mini fridge or whatever, sinks, all of that kind of thing. But you created a communal kitchen space. Why did you do that?
So actually, the communal kitchen was already there with the sisters, and that was what we loved about it, because we wanted people to be forced to interact with each other. Because if you could just get your food and go in your room and eat, you could potentially not see your neighbors forever. So we wanted to create an opportunity for co-learning. There are many co-housing models around the country, and the benefits of that are learning from each other, supporting each other, learning together, with opportunities for outside speakers and instructors to come in. So yes, the communal living for eating and also for studying is critical to the model for that very reason.
So when I look at that model, I also see that I can enter into the program and I can get the support that I need to get from where I am to where I want to go. But as I'm going through that, it's very easy for me to turn and extend that hand to somebody new coming in, which I think is, yes, helpful to the person coming in, but I don't think we talk enough about how helpful it is to the person giving the help.
You are exactly right. It's empowering to see that your advice and your support in lifting up your sisters, your neighbors, actually feeds and nourishes you
Mm.
as the giver of that support. So that is 100% true.
What else should we know about what you're trying to accomplish?
Our vision for YWCA is to share with the community that we're not just a community center where kids go to, play basketball right after school, which is also an important
Valuable.
service, very valuable. But we are literally on a mission. I mentioned that our mandate is to advocate for systemic change. So we do have the advocacy and education efforts that go beyond city limits. We are talking about, we were funded by United Way to create awareness about the wage gap between white men and women of color. And that launched us into all of our racial justice and gender equity work. And that is at the US level. We don't have an equal pay law in this country to
Yep.
this day. So we are working with other YWCAs across the country to advocate for that. We're advocating for affordable and high quality childcare, which goes beyond San Antonio. It should be something that the federal government, pays for. It will help businesses, it helps the economy, and it helps working families. So we do see ourselves as an activist and systemic change organization. We also see ourselves as an engine for economic development. We are growing workforce development and economic empowerment programs come from the belief that without economic power, women can't truly be free. Yes, all of the social determinants of health are important to keep her healthy and thriving, but
Yep.
without economic freedom, a woman can't leave an abusive relationship with freely without being able to support herself. A woman, can't determine her future, doesn't have the freedom to dream about her potential.
Yep.
So we see ourselves as a force for economic development, especially for women, which, as I mentioned at the start of this, is a ripple effect for the community and the city. So some of the things we're talking about are expanding our housing program, purchasing more real estate for
Mhm.
other women-focused economic programs, other sources of earned income with women as the drivers. We don't know what that looks like as of yet, but other YWCAs are in that space, either operating for-profit hotels, for example, or creating maker spaces for women entrepreneurs. So
Mhm.
we haven't even begun to explore those possibilities, but we know that it is something we want to get into.
I would look forward to a maker space. I think that would be incredible, especially in the part of town where you're in, that there are not a lot of opportunities for a startup to find a space and work and grow and find some support, because I think I was in a co-working space, which is not quite the same, but there's a lot of camaraderie that happens in there. and just other people to talk to, I think is really important. That's kind of informal learning.
I agree. And, we're on a side of town that, yes, has been historically underinvested in,
Mhm.
but the Port San Antonio is not far from here. Right
Mhm.
across the street, we have the Bud Light plant. Wouldn't it be cool to have a woman-owned brewery or a women in technology space that is close to Port San Antonio? So
Yes.
absolutely.
I think we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for joining me today. I hope that this was very interesting and enlightening to a lot of people. And certainly, as a woman CEO, I am very glad that you joined me today for a little bit.
Well, thank you. It's been fun and a pleasure, and I'm so grateful to be able to share the word about YWCA.
Well, thank you. And for those of you that are listening, give us a like, give us a share, subscribe, helps us spread the word, and we will see you next time.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode. Raising the Bar is powered by Altique Consulting, the country's leading independent expert in healthcare cost containment. Astute employers know there's a better way to offer health insurance, and we help them achieve it.